converts, OGs, what's up? It's NJ. This is the Leafs Convo podcast. We have a brand new episode for you, talking about the Maple Leafs losing to the Capitals. What did Washington have when it won the Stanley Cup that the Leafs currently don't? And can the Leafs get it? Do they even want to get it? Are they ready to make that move to become a Stanley Cup contender legitimately? Mike Augello standing by. We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll throw some names out there, potential players the Leafs could acquire with February 25th coming up quick. The Leafs Convo starts now. The Leafs Convo is brought to you by Vanguard Northeast Realty. With over 15 years experience, Vanguard provides superior level of service for commercial real estate tenants and owners. For more information, visit vanguardne.ca.
And here is my brother from another mother, the one and only Michael P. Augello. Caps, Leafs at Scotiabank Arena. The Stanley Cup champions taking it 3-2. The Leafs giving the Caps run of the place for the first portion of the game, then putting two in the third period. But you know what? The Capitals just weren't having any of it. They won the game, and now the Leafs have to go back to the drawing board because Montreal's next.
The thing that I carried from that game is, again, like the game in St. Louis, they started slow. They continued to be slow, and you can't put in a period and expect to beat most teams. Washington has championship credentials, and they had their slump earlier this month and late last month, and now they're turning it around. And it was a different team that the Leafs faced yesterday than the one that they faced just before the All-Star break. I mean, it was, Ovechkin at his best, and Tom Wilson throwing his weight around, knocking Jake Gardner down on the second goal. And only in the third period did the Leafs come alive, and as soon as they got their goal, Wilson scores a shorthanded goal and sucks the momentum out of the building, and they get a goal with 34 seconds. But really, I don't think they were much in that game other than the few minutes when they were only down by a goal. So it wasn't a good effort. And, Mike Babcock said after the game that, this team can't outscore their defensive mistakes.
42 shots on goal for the Leafs. They did well in the face-off circle, winning 2/3 of the face-offs. 0 for 2 on the power play. 17 hits to the Capitals 35, 12 block shots to the Capitals 21, and they gave away the puck 18 times. The Leafs are sort of a tale of two teams here, Michael. This is another game that emphasizes the point to management that the Leafs still need some improvements. They need some accessories to take that next step and get to that next level.
Well, I looked at what Babcock did yesterday before the game at the morning skate, where he's clearly moving around some of his line combinations and defensive pairings, and ever since they got Muzzin from Los Angeles, they've been shaking up the pairings, and the pairings yesterday were Riley and Hainsey and Gardner and Zaitsev. It was back to what it was. And I don't think Jake Muzzin should be playing on the bottom pairing. And based on the way Zaitsev and Gardner played yesterday, those two should be broken up permanently. But Babcock likes his toys, and he likes what he's familiar with, and he went back to his familiar combos. And in the end, I think that hurt them. It wasn't a complete effort, and it wasn't a terrible effort, but there's just not a lot of consistency there. And if you look at the division, Tampa's running away with it. Boston's won 7 in a row, and the Leafs have had a decent stretch, but they're marginally over 500, and that's just not going to cut it in the Atlantic
Morgan
division.
Riley with 25 minutes, 11 seconds of ice time, leading all defensemen. Then Jake Gardner, just over 22 minutes. Jake Muzzin, almost 20 minutes. Ron Hainsey, 16 minutes. Nikita Zaitsev, 15 minutes, 35 seconds. So there is a hierarchy there, and your best defenseman has the most ice time. Your not worst defenseman, but the last guy on the depth chart, he's got the least amount of minutes. So anybody who gets on Mike Babcock, look, the guy is staunch, he's stubborn, and he needs to evolve if he's going to help lead this team in the right direction and ultimately get it to the championship position. But he can only use what he has available to him. People like to get on him for the way he aligns them or the way he sets them up, but it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other most of the time, Mike, because this is what you have until reinforcements come in. And I'm not so sure Kyle Dubas is in a position, considering the way the team has been playing and the methods that he likes to employ when he makes transactions if he is going to bring in somebody to reshape this defense core?
The answer clearly is not the same combos that they've used for most of the season, because the same problems are coming up. So, you bring in a top four defenseman in Muzzin. Now, maybe Morgan Riley is better on the left side than the right side, but he's not bad on the right side, and you need to get Muzzin into the top four, because if it's Riley, Hainsey, and Gardner and Zaitsev against Boston, you're going to have, and especially Gardner and Zaitsev, it's going to be giveaway after giveaway. So we will see what Kyle Dubas will do in the next 72 hours. I think that there's something coming. I don't know how major it will be, but clearly, what you look at and what you see right now, they're not in a position where they're going to be a favorite against the Boston Bruins in the first round, because the Bruins are doing something before the deadline. The Bruins, even without Pasternak, are red hot. They're a playoff-tested team. The Leafs have, I think, more talent, but whether they can put it together and whether their coach will implement what they need to implement to beat the Bruins is the big question.
Absolutely. Tom Wilson, you hate the guy. He plays on the edge. He's kind of a throwback player. If you put him on the Leafs roster, does he make an appreciable difference, or is this team still not in the mindset to support Tom Wilson and allow him to flourish?
I mean, Tom Wilson is a difference maker. I know that some people, don't want to admit that, but yesterday, remember the last game against Washington before the All-Star break, John Tavares shoved Wilson down, and everybody, there was a GIF on Twitter, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's great." Tom Wilson came back yesterday. He hit Tavares against the boards. He cross-checked him in the back as they were going back to the bench. He clearly remembered it. And then he was a bull in a china shop in that game where he knocks down Jake Gardner, creates a turnover that leads to a goal, and scores the winning goal. So, yeah, he's a difference maker, and not just by throwing big hits and being a big body presence. He's a talented player, and there are not many players that have his skill set, his size, and match what he can do. But I think a lot of teams in the East are saying, who can we get that can partially neutralize or respond to Wilson?
The Leafs have another year. I'm expecting this team to get on a run. But anyone who thinks that the way the team is comprised now is good enough to take it through several series against teams like Boston and Tampa is just kidding themselves. This team still needs to level up. Kyle Dubas understands that. Mike, before we go, throw out some names that you think the Leafs will be attached to as we get closer to Monday.
Well, the interesting thing, and when I listened to Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts with Jeff Merrick yesterday, they went through the entire league, and he's got a read on the Leafs probably second to none. And when he says, the conventional wisdom right now is, maybe they'll make a tinkering move, but he doesn't believe that Kyle Dubas adheres to the conventional wisdom and thinks that, there's a possibility that they will get the right-handed top four defenseman before Monday. Now, that might mean giving up a Janssen or giving up a Kapanen, but you'd be giving those guys up at the highest possible value that they have. They're having good years, and, sometimes it's better to sell high, especially when you definitely need that top four right-hand shot defenseman to solidify the blue line, because this team is not going anywhere until that blue line is solidified. So names that he mentioned were Brandon Montour of Anaheim, and Dubas was in Anaheim last week to purportedly to view Montour, but could have been for other players as well. He mentioned Nick Jensen from Detroit, who would be more of a rental, but and of a cheaper variety in terms of getting trading a draft pick. But then obviously the Carolina guys as well. Jared Spurgeon from Minnesota, who's got a year left in his contract. I mean, all these guys, Pesce, Montour, Spurgeon, all right-handed, all with term left in their contracts. They're not going to be cheap, but that's probably the direction they have to go. And unfortunately, I don't see them flipping Jake Gardner at the deadline, because I think that would be smart. You would be doing what they didn't do last year with JVR and Bozak, where they just kept them as own rentals and let them walk. And I don't see Jake Gardner re-signing, because he's going to get a big payday in free agency in the summer. Other than defensemen, I think there's a possibility they go out for a depth forward. Again, the fourth line was not spectacular yesterday. I could see, names like Kyle Clifford, Luke Glendening are possible. I think they're going to look for a fourth line center, especially with the Kadri injury, because, I don't know if Babcock has the trust in Nylander to be a third line center in a playoff scenario. I think Kadri will be back before then. I think mostly at forward, it's going to be depth options, but on defense, if they're going to make a big deal, that's where it will
Unless the Leafs collectively transform into the Incredible Hulk, I don't see this team sending the league a message that it's ready to win a Stanley Cup. The names that you just mentioned, Mike, when you talk about these kinds of players like Luke Glendening or Kyle Clifford, these guys will help out a little bit, but they are not the last pieces to a puzzle that's almost complete. Kyle Dubas, the brass, realizes that steps are being made, progress is being made. Sometimes it feels slower than other times, but in terms of going out and doing anything dramatic, he's going to have to bring somebody back who can make an impact and who has term if you're going to trade away an Andreas Johnsson or Kasperi Kapanen. And I just feel like the way things are going right now, this might not be the time for the Leafs to take that leap of faith, right? And, go all in on players who they believe will help them win the Stanley Cup. Last word to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's very possible. The type of deal that we're talking about might be more conducive to the summer and to the draft. But I do think there's a hunger there for the Leafs to do something before the deadline. So it might be just a tinkering move, but it could be something bigger.
I love this time of the season, and you're the guy who's going to help fill us in. Talk to you soon.
We would like to thank Vanguard Northeast Realty in Scarborough, title sponsor of the Leafs Convo, demonstrating passion for the industry and a superior level of excellence in selling, leasing, and marketing your property. Vanguard Northeast Realty. That's a wrap for the podcast. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, we have the Leafs and the Deadline playlist on the YouTube channel right now. Make sure you bookmark it, consult it, because we're adding to it lots between now and Monday, the NHL Trade Deadline. For Mike, I'm Norm. Talk to you soon. We out.